Sean Salisbury here for Open Sports, and I've had this on my mind for a couple days, and really since Chad Johnson on Thursday night, the wide receiver for the Bengals, was deactivated for the game for whether it was falling asleep or in a meeting, missing a meeting, whatever goes on in-house, but for breaking team rules. I am a huge Chad Johnson fan. I'm fond of him as a person. Every time I've met him or been around him, he's been nothing but great to me, and we've laughed. But sometimes you just got to look at it and say it's time. And in Cincinnati, it's time. Chad Johnson, I didn't think he was a big distraction. And I actually went out and said that he was, and I have been for the last couple of years. The celebrations, some are a little outlandish, I get it, but they didn't bother me that bad. He was having fun, and he gets to the office early to get himself ready to play and has always performed. He's always performed and got it done. And then we remember the argument with Carson Palmer on the sidelines. Well, those things happen, but you got to be able to push that aside. And it hasn't been able to be pushed aside, and I don't know about their relationship privately or how it is, but performance-wise, it hasn't been pushed aside enough for those two to perform, and I know Carson's been hurt. Chad Johnson's a great football player, and when I've met him, seems like a great guy. But it's time in Cincinnati. See, it's time for Cincinnati Bengals to do something that a dad has to do to a child when a child's getting out of line and needs to be disciplined. Remember that there's a respectful fear that the Cincinnati Bengals management and owners and head coach run that team, not Chad Johnson. Not Chad Johnson. It's that simple. Chad's a great player, but it's time for a new venue. It's time for Chad to go. It's not only time for Chad to go and play somewhere else. It's time for the Cincinnati Bengals to fix the most immature team in all of sports, period. Immature. Ought to be playing with pacifiers in their mouth. And I've said this before. It's ridiculous. Everything. It's off the field. It's on the field. It's whining. It's pouting. It's finger pointing. And you know, when your best football player, Carson Palmer's hurt, and your other best football player, Chad Johnson, is deactivated and things aren't going well, you remember all the off-season trouble he had? Love Chad Johnson. Still think he's one of the best players in the league. Cincinnati needs to send a message, because if you're not winning with the superstar high-paid guys, do what the guys like Billy Beane for the Oakland Athletics, the general manager, does. Get rid of them. Let them go be a star, or let them go try to be a star someplace else. Because if I got a high-priced guy who's a distraction, and I got a low-priced guy who's not, and the performance isn't any better, why the hell would I keep the high-priced guy who's not getting it done? And every single week I got to wonder if he's going to be a pain in my ass. Okay? Like I said, nothing personal. I'm looking at it from the Cincinnati Bengals standpoint because their team's pathetic. The organization right now is pathetic, and it's been that way for a long time. Marvin Lewis, their head coach, fixed it for a while. But until they get rid of these people that are nothing but a pain in the rear end all the time, until they get rid of them, Cincinnati's going to be a laughingstock, and the dark clouds are going to be hovering over their stadium always and their football offices. I love Chad. I'll make that point again. Not personal. It's time to move on. And it's time for somebody in the Cincinnati Bengals front office or head coach or ownership to say enough's enough. The players are not going to dictate what goes on. If they want to do it, send their ass somewhere else and let them do it somewhere else. Because Chad Johnson would not get away with this stuff if he was playing for Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick or a guy like Tony Dungy. This wouldn't happen. Trust me. And it's not Marvin's fault. I think Marvin and some of the times on Cincinnati, yes, they've enabled these players. Marvin's a tough guy. He's been around great players. But a point in time comes where you lose control, and everybody seems to have lost control. Time for Chad Johnson to move on, whether he wants to or not. Got to get rid of him. Plus, where's the production? There's not a lot of production going on there. We're not winning with him, not winning without him. So who cares? Time to move on. I'm Sean Salisbury.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.